Have you ever felt the cosmos fall into silence? Not from serenity, but because something ancient had fixed its gaze upon you? What if your pursuit of divine truth did not lead you toward the heavens, but into something far older, deeper, and more unyielding? What if the only revelation at the end of your journey was not light, but a scream? A seeker once reached for the face of God, only to find something infinitely more dreadful. Welcome to Tales of Mythology, where forgotten horrors, timeless legends, and wars of the supernatural rise again. If you crave the untold shadows of myth, remember to like this video, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a story carved in eternity. Music. He awoke tangled in roots. Damp earth pressed against his palms, sweat against his brow. The forest around him was suffocatingly alive, its trees impossibly ancient, their bark carved with symbols no mortal tongue remembered. A fog drifted between the gnarled roots like grief made flesh. He tried to recall his name, his path here, but memory slipped away. Then came a growl. He turned. 3 pairs of eyes watched him. First, the sleek elegance of a panther, its gaze sharp with mocking beauty. Then, the thunderous chest of a lion, its golden mane gleaming like a crown of judgment. Finally, the starved frame of a wolf, its breath foul with grief that never died. They circled him slowly. He ran. Branches tore his arms. Yet the beasts did not hunt, they guided. The more he resisted, the closer they pressed. His mind fractured beneath their silence. Were they punishment? Were they spirit? He collapsed beside a stream flowing backward, water running uphill in defiance of time. A voice emerged from the mist. You seek not mercy. You seek meaning. From the haze stepped a man, or something borrowing his form. His body bore no wound, but sorrow clung to him like a second shadow. His eyes, gentle yet hollow. I am Virgil, he said. Condemned by divine decree, I walk again. Are you death? The scholar whispered. No. Worse. I am understanding. The beasts halted, watching but unmoving. I sought God, the scholar confessed. I tried to. You climbed where no mortal may, Virgil replied. And now, like the others, you must descend. The scholar rose, not to flee, but to follow. They walked. The forest shivered at their passing, its branches trembling. A path opened, not forward, not backward, but downward. At its end loomed a gate, blacker than night, carved from obsidian veined with rust. Above it, etched in merciless script. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. The air itself stilled. Even thought grew heavy. The scholar stepped through. Inside, there were no flames, only sound. 1,000 voices crying, whispering, cursing in tongues long dead. Shadows without mouths screamed silently against the void. Virgil spoke. These are the souls of those who chose nothing. They would not follow heaven, nor defy it. So now both reject them. In the distance, a banner fluttered endlessly, leading a swarm of faceless souls. Hornets tore their flesh, worms gnawed their heels. Kings who ruled with indifference, priests who preached emptiness, philosophers who drowned in their own doubt. Why do they run? The scholar asked. They chase what they never chose, Virgil answered, and it forever escapes them. Inferno. Canto the Third. They reached a river, its waters black as mercury, heavy with regret. Souls crowded the banks like broken reflections. A pale figure stood upon a skiff, Charon the ferryman. His eyes burned with rage as they fell on the living man. You do not belong here, he spat. Return to breath, or drown in it. The river trembled. Silence consumed the cries. The scholar heard his heartbeat, and then nothing. Something unseen whispered to Charon. He faltered. Virgil nodded. You were never meant to live blind. The scholar stepped onto the boat, not with fear, but with hunger. As the mist closed in, cold seized his lungs, frost claimed the wood beneath his feet, and he collapsed. He dreamed, not of fire, but of emptiness. Through me, the way into eternal sorrow. Through me, the path of endless grief. Through me, the road among the lost. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Music. The vestibule of damnation held no flame, only endless noise. Voices collided, curses tore at reason, every syllable a blade. A plain of colorless dust stretched ahead. Above, a banner fluttered endlessly, guiding a legion of the forgotten. They ran, eyes hollow, feet bleeding, stung by swarms of wasps. Their blood and tears fell to worms that fed eagerly. He looked away, stomach heaving, but Virgil held his gaze. This is not evil, the guide said. This is refusal. They would not stand for heaven nor for hell. And so both denied them. A king's crown had rotted to larvae. A priest's rosary burned into his flesh. A philosopher's parchment crumbled to ash at each word. None begged for mercy. They only screamed to be remembered. A horn blared in the distance. At the river's edge, the souls pressed together. Charon's ivory skin cracked like old bone, his eyes blazing, not with flame, but with judgment. He hissed at the scholar. "This passage is not for the living. Turn back." The souls cowered. The scholar froze, wishing the beasts would return, for at least they had purpose. The current narrowed, deepened, and the air drained of all color. The scholar turned to Virgil. "Why do they chase the empty banner?" "They followed nothing in life," the guide said softly. "And now in death, they are cursed to pursue nothing forever." The scholar looked down into the river. It reflected neither light nor shadow. The cold crept into his limbs. The fog thickened. They reached the river's heart. There, the current stopped. The surface of the Acheron turned solid, ice spreading in fractal veins. The cries vanished. No echo, no breath, only stillness, deep as creation's first silence. And then, darkness took him again. These wretches who never truly lived are mingled with the coward angels who neither were rebellious nor were faithful to God, but stood apart. Music. He awoke, not to screams nor to the sound of water, but to a silence so complete it felt alive. No wind stirred, no breath echoed, even his heartbeat seemed distant, as though it had been left behind on the other side of the river. Before him stretched a vast meadow, cloaked in perpetual twilight, lit not by sun nor moon, but by a dull glow that seemed to emanate from the air itself. "This is Limbo," Virgil said, voice low and unburdened. "The first circle of hell." It did not look like hell. There were no chains, no flames, no cries of agony. The air was still. A faint breeze touched the grasses but carried no scent. Trees with silver bark swayed gently, as if asleep. Souls wandered here, many seated beneath the trees, some in clusters engaged in muted conversation, others alone, staring upward into a sky with no stars. "They feel no pain," Virgil continued, "but they also feel no joy, only the weight of eternity and the echo of what might have been." The scholar took cautious steps forward. The ground was firm, the light even, the peace deceptive. This was not suffering, it was something cruder. This was the absence of God. He saw children, dozens of them, wandering without purpose, their eyes wide and solemn, as if they understood something he did not. A poet recited lines with no sound. A philosopher drew circles in the dust, then erased them again and again. He passed a group of men seated in a circle. At their center, a tall figure with a noble brow spoke in rhythmic cadences, though no words reached the scholar's ears. One beside him gestured with furious grace, while another scribbled symbols in the air. "Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle," Virgil whispered. Their voices had once shaped worlds, but now their wisdom echoed in a void that offered no reply. The scholar knelt before one who looked up and smiled. "What truth do you seek?" the philosopher asked, his lips barely moving. "I seek what lies below," the scholar said. "There is no truth in hell," came the reply. "Only memory." The scholar turned to Virgil. "You said they feel no pain." "They don't, but they remember what joy felt like." He could now feel it, the ache beneath the stillness, a yearning so vast it could not scream. These were the souls who almost reached heaven but missed the mark by moments, by fate, by birth. He saw the unbaptized, the just, the wise, all exiled, not by their actions but by time. They wandered, not because they were lost, but because they were excluded. "Has anyone ever left this place?" the scholar asked. Virgil paused, his gaze wandered to the horizon. "Yes, once long ago a light came, brighter than morning. He was crowned in victory and bore no burden. He passed through the circles, not to judge, but to free." "The harrowing," the scholar whispered. "The day hell trembled." Virgil nodded. "He took many, the faithful before their time. Adam, Moses, David, Rachel. But not us, not me." It was the first time the scholar heard sorrow in Virgil's voice. The poet who had guided him through the darkness now stared at the skyless void with eyes that could no longer cry. "Why weren't you taken?" he asked. "I had reason, not faith," Virgil replied. They walked deeper. The twilight dimmed, the ground changed, less solid now, more like memory than earth. Figures passed in and out of vision, never nearing, never departing. The silence felt heavier. He knelt again beside a figure seated in solitude, a child barely old enough to walk. The boy looked up and smiled, though his eyes were older than the world. He spoke a single phrase. The scholar did not know the language, but he understood. "He waits below, not to torment, to explain." The scholar blinked, and the child was gone. No greater grief than to remember days of joy when misery is at hand. The descent was sudden. One step beyond the fading edge of limbo, and the world collapsed into storm. Gone were the muted meadows and quiet souls. Here, there was no ground beneath their feet, only the rush of air, a cyclonic force that howled with the voices of the damned. The second circle was not a place. It was motion, constant, violent, hungry. They stood upon a jagged ledge of obsidian jutting from a skyless abyss. Around them, a vortex twisted with the weight of countless souls, hurled like leaves in a hurricane that never ceased. The cries were not of pain alone, but of longing. "This," Virgil said, raising his voice above the wind, "is where lust is punished, not for love, but for making desire the highest law." He did not need to explain. The scholar could feel it, the magnetic pull of the maelstrom, not toward death, but toward 1,000 half-formed embraces that would never complete. Bodies spun, tangled, ripped apart, never landing, never resting. He saw faces contorted in rapture and agony, eyes shut tight against memory. Some called out names, others called for silence. Among the swirling storm, figures passed too quickly to identify, until one drew near, a woman, regal in bearing, with tangled hair and hollow eyes. A name came to him, Semiramis. Then another followed, cloaked in beauty, Cleopatra. Her lips parted in silent invocation. Helen of Troy came next, her image fractured in the spinning gale, followed by Tristan, locked in pursuit of something that always fled. The scholar gasped as two souls passed closely, circling one another in tandem. They did not fight the storm, but moved within it, like dancers caught in the last step of a waltz. Their bodies never touched, but their eyes never left each other. He called out, "You together in this wind, who are you?" The vortex shifted, calmed momentarily. The two figures slowed and drifted toward him. "We are Paolo and Francesca," said the woman, her voice a breath inside the storm. "We read of love and became it. One kiss, and we never stopped falling." He had heard their tale, two souls entwined by story, by the legend of Lancelot, cousins by marriage, lovers by fate, slain by betrayal, damned not for crime, but for surrendering to beauty. Francesca's eyes met his. "We do not curse love," she said. "We curse the moment we let it become more real than truth." The scholar trembled. "Did you regret it?" he asked. "No," said Paolo, "but we never left that moment. Even now it swallows us." Francesca wept, but her tears vanished in the wind. Virgil watched from a distance, saying nothing. Then the storm roared again. The vortex recoiled, as if awakening, its fury redoubled. The scholar's footing slipped. Virgil reached, but too late, the storm claimed him. He was lifted, hurled, not into darkness, but into desire, not of flesh, but of knowing. His thoughts became fire, of forbidden books, of veiled mysteries, of divine secrets never meant for eyes. The thrill of truth tasted, the ache of it slipping away. He spun through fragments of memory, a touch, a gaze, a word half heard, all the moments he had chased beauty, not for its meaning, but for how it made him feel. He understood now what this circle punished, not lust for bodies, but lust for escape. For a brief instant, he surrendered to it, and then Virgil's hand. The guide pulled him back, breathless and dazed, his robes torn, his eyes wide. "You saw it," Virgil said, "the prison." The scholar nodded. Desire without anchor becomes a storm. They stood again at the ledge. The wind howled. Francesca and Paolo faded once more into the gale. "Love that on gentle heart doth swiftly seize, seized this man for the fair form taken from me. Love that exempts no one beloved from loving, seized me with pleasure of this man so strongly that, as thou sayest, it doth not yet desert me." The descent into the third circle was like plunging into a dying stomach. The air turned fetid, thick with rot and sweetness gone rancid. The sky was no longer sky, but a gray, ulcerous ceiling from which bile-colored rain fell in sheets. It didn't splash, it clung. It coated skin in syrupy layers, seeping into flesh, refusing to dry. The stench hit like a memory long buried, of spoiled meat, of decay masked by perfume. They stepped into a plain of black mud. It wasn't earth, it was waste, churned by the movements of countless bodies buried halfway in the sludge, bloated and pale, groaning through mouths filled with filth. The rain never stopped. It felt like a punishment written in liquid, acidic and slow. "This is the punishment for gluttony," said Virgil, covering his mouth. "Not for hunger, but for consuming to forget, for making comfort a god." The scholar said nothing. The mud reached his ankles. He could feel it pulling downward, not with weight, but with memory, thoughts of meals eaten in loneliness, nights spent reading, not for enlightenment, but for distraction, words consumed like sugar. From the dark, a low growl emerged, followed by another, then a third. Cerberus, the beast, came crawling through the mire like a curse. 3 heads, each gnashing, each snarling, its bellies dragged through the filth as its claws scraped the earth. Slime hung from its jaws in ropes. Its eyes, 6 pits of blind hunger, burned red, not with rage but with appetite. Souls screamed and buried their faces as it passed. One tried to rise. Cerberus lunged, tore, swallowed. The soul dissolved with barely a sound. The beast turned toward them. It growled low. The scholar froze. Virgil moved quickly. He scooped a handful of the rank sludge and flung it into Cerberus's middle head. The beast howled, shook, and began devouring the mess as if it were meat. Its other heads joined, biting at each other in confusion. They passed silently. The deeper they walked, the worse the stench became. The rain thickened. It wasn't just acidic, it was sweet now, like syrup laced with blood. The sweetness clung to the tongue, coating the back of the throat. They came upon a soul curled in a puddle of slime. His flesh sagged from his bones, worms feasted on his belly. His eyes opened as they passed. "You still breathe," he whispered. "Tell them I was not always like this." The scholar knelt. "Who were you?" "I wrote songs," the soul said. "Played lute, drank well, ate better." People laughed. "I was adored." His mouth twisted. "But it was never enough. I kept filling myself to keep the silence out. The silence came anyway." He grasped at the scholar's robe, smearing him with rot. "Tell them I had music once, a name. I mattered." The scholar felt bile rise in his throat. He wanted to weep, but tears would have only mingled with the rain. A cry pierced the dark. Another soul, bloated, wide-eyed, rose from the mire and screamed into the sky. "God, look at me." Cerberus returned. It didn't howl this time. It tore. Flesh shredded, bones cracked. The scream did not stop. It choked into a wet gurgle, then silence. The scholar turned to Virgil, horrified. "Why?" He only cried out. Virgil's voice was low. "The worst hunger is for grace that will never come." The scholar shivered. The cold here was not of ice, but of numbness. He realized, with a sickening twist, that he too had devoured comfort to keep emptiness away. Knowledge had been his feast, not wisdom, just noise, just fullness. The rain continued to fall. They moved on, the sound of chewing and weeping behind them never fading. And over them, Cerberus, monster cruel and uncouth, barks with 3 throats like a dog over his prey. The souls are drowned in the foul rain. They descended further, leaving behind the rot and syrup of gluttony. The air changed, thinner now, but sharp, metallic. Every breath tasted of iron and ash. The ground was no longer mud, but stone, smooth and circular, sloping in endless curves like a wheel carved into the bones of the earth. The sound reached them before the sight, grinding, crashing, and furious chants echoing off the curved walls. Then the moaning, not sorrowful, not repentant, angry, bitter, endless. They emerged onto a vast plain split by a deep trench. On either side, massive stones were being pushed by lines of souls, each chained to their burden. Their bodies strained, muscles knotted, lips curled in exertion as they collided in the center of the circle. They shouted, "Why hoard? Why waste?" Again and again they collided, they screamed, they turned back, they pushed again. The ritual repeated without end. "This," Virgil said, "is the 4th circle. Here dwell the misers and the prodigals, those who twisted the world with the illusion of control." The scholar watched in silence as the damned fought with stones. Some wore faded crowns, others tattered clerical robes. A banker in silk boots pushed beside a woman who once fed cities with coin. Their distinctions were meaningless now, their burdens the same. "They are punished not by fire," Virgil continued, "but by mathematics, by the numbers they worshipped. They made ledgers their gospel." The scholar peered into the distance. A throne stood atop a mound of broken coins and rusted chains. Upon it squatted a monstrous shape, golden flesh flaking, eyes like molten copper, lips stitched from parchment. "Plutus." He did not speak, he hissed. Coins spilled from his mouth in an unending stream, falling into the trench below. His hands clutched a scepter that was also a scale, but its weights were broken, dangling without meaning. "What does he guard?" the scholar asked. "Nothing," said Virgil. "He hoards, not for power, but out of fear, a fear that if he stops, he disappears." Plutus turned his molten gaze toward them and gibbered in a language that sounded like gold melting into screams. The stones below rattled. The souls pushed harder. These wore robes of faith and fed on lies, Virgil spat. They wore crowns of dust and named it divinity. But now their truths are carved into stone. The scholar approached one of the weights, massive, dark, veined with tarnished gold. He ran his fingers along it and stopped. There, etched into its surface, was a name, his father's. The script was faint but unmistakable, the name he had spoken with pride, now buried beneath chains and toil. He stepped back, breath shallow. His father, a man of principle, of provision, a man who gave, who built. Or so he had believed. Virgil placed a hand on his shoulder. Legacy is not memory. Memory fades, legacy distorts. The scholar stared at the stone. He wanted to scream, but nothing came. The storm within him had no voice. He looked back across the circle. The damned had turned again. They pushed, they shouted. Why hoard? Why waste? Plutus hissed. The circle spun, and the scholar knew. This was not punishment for wealth. This was punishment for believing control could purchase salvation. Why do you hoard? Why do you squander? Thus they cried, each turning round upon the other. The ground vanished into water. A black, rotting marsh stretched before them, its surface choked with slime and steam. The stench was suffocating, of blood long spoiled, of bile and iron and grief. The river Styx. No current flowed through its tainted depths, only the heaving of bodies, the struggle of rage made eternal. On the surface, the wrathful raged, limbs flailing, fists tearing, their faces contorted in hatred, locked in endless combat with one another and with themselves. Their screams rose above the marsh, though many could no longer form words, just gurgles of fury forced through mouths thick with mud. Below, the sullen remained unseen, only bubbles rising like blisters on diseased flesh. These had not screamed in life, they had stewed in silence. Now they boiled beneath the surface, trapped in mute bitterness. The scholar recoiled at the spectacle. They fight for nothing. No, Virgil said. They fight because they must. Hatred, once fed, devours the one who holds it. This is its final shape, fire with no fuel, striking endlessly into darkness. A skiff approached, narrow and splintered, its sides scarred with burn marks. A silent ferryman waited, face obscured beneath a dark hood. No greeting, no demand, only permission granted by presence alone. They boarded. The marsh lapped against the boat, warm, too warm, like a fever, like blood. Halfway across, a shape rose from the water, a man torn and bruised, teeth bared with old fury. He lunged at the scholar, grabbing his arm, eyes wide with something deeper than rage. You, the soul spat. You were like me. Tell me I was right. Tell me I mattered. The scholar looked into his eyes and saw himself. Those long nights of bitterness, of silent judgment, of speaking only to his thoughts, never to truth. But instead of anger, he felt pity. The soul trembled, the grip loosened. Virgil stepped between them. Do not mistake sorrow for repentance, he said. Many mourn what they lost, few mourn why. The soul hissed and sank, dragging the warmth of the scholar's blood with him into the depths. They reached the far shore. A city loomed beyond, its walls jagged towers of black iron, glowing with an inner fire that never flickered. From its gates rose smoke and the scent of burnt salt. The ground before it was scorched and cracked, veins of glowing magma pulsing beneath. At the gate stood the fallen, once angels, now twisted mockeries of light. Their wings hung in tatters, their eyes pits of molten stone. They formed no formation, no army, only a wall of denial. Virgil approached. We seek passage. The angels did not speak. They raised no weapons, but the gates remained sealed. One stepped forward and placed a burned hand upon the iron bars. A low hum followed, a sound of refusal etched in cosmic language. Virgil faltered. The scholar saw it, just for a moment, the unease, the shadow of doubt. Even here, even now, his guide feared. What do we do? He asked. We wait, Virgil said, voice thin. The heat rose, the silence swelled. The fallen angels stared without blinking. The scholar's limbs felt heavy, as if despair were a weight sinking into his bones. His faith, whatever was left, waned. Then the air changed, not with song, not with trumpet, but with a stillness deeper than the Styx itself. A figure approached, an angel, but not of glory. This one wore no robe, bore no wings. It moved with a silence so absolute it made the flames retreat. Its face was featureless, its body as pale as bone. It said nothing. It reached the gates, raised a single finger, and touched the iron. The metal screamed. The bars melted, not into fire, but into nothing. The gates dissolved. The fallen stepped back. Even hell bends to what is divine. The angel turned and vanished, leaving no step in the ash. Virgil exhaled. They cannot deny what was never theirs to challenge. They passed through the opened gate, and the screams resumed. Oh, all ye who are of sound intellect, mark well the doctrine that conceals itself beneath the veil of these strange verses. Within the iron walls of Dis, the silence gave way to screams, not of pain, but of certainty. Ahead stretched a field of tombs, open coffins of stone, blazing with eternal fire. From within, their flames burned upward, tongues of defiance licking at the ash-gray sky. Unlike the circles above, these souls did not moan, they proclaimed. "This is the resting place of the heretics," said Virgil. "Those who claimed the soul died with the body, who worshipped the mind but not the mystery." The heat rolled in waves. The scholar stepped cautiously between the burning tombs, each one filled with writhing figures locked in endless declaration. He heard them, preachers, revolutionaries, philosophers, shouting ideas now twisted by time and agony. Each insisted on their truth. Each denied the soul's survival. Now their logic fed the flames that consumed them. "These tombs are not sealed," Virgil explained. "They will be, once the final judgment reunites each soul with its body. Then the flames will close forever." A woman rose halfway from a tomb, her hair aflame, her teeth clenched. "I was right," she screamed. "The soul is mortal. Pain proves nothing." Another voice, deeper, calmer, echoed from the crypt beside her. "I am eternal because I thought I was. Is that not enough?" The scholar turned to his guide. "Do they know they're wrong?" Virgil shook his head. "They believe still. The fire does not change them, it only shows them what they refuse to see." They passed a tomb larger than the rest. Upon its side were etched ancient mathematical symbols and theological riddles. From within came a voice he recognized. "You arrived late, but not too late to witness your own arrogance." The scholar froze. Inside, a face emerged, a man pale and blistered, his eyes burning with intellect. A former teacher, a master of logic, revered and feared alike, the one who had taught the scholar to question everything and believe in nothing. "You," the shade said, smiling through cracked lips. "You who sought heaven through formulas, you who measured eternity with instruments. Welcome to the grave you built for yourself." The scholar stepped closer, heart hammering. "You said truth had no need for faith. And I was right," the ghost spat. "Faith is a refuge for the weak. I preferred reason. Even now, I reason with the fire. The flames don't convince me, they confirm me. Even pain is an equation, and I solved it long ago." The tomb pulsed with heat. The teacher coughed, but still he smiled. "You will join me one day," he said, "and you'll thank me." The scholar looked away. He felt no anger, no fear, only the hollow weight of a truth devoid of wonder. They walked on. Beatrice's name echoed softly from a tomb behind him, spoken like a curse. He turned, but saw only smoke. "She was hope," Virgil said. "You made her a theorem." A long pause followed. The tombs flared brighter. "Will knowing save any of them?" the scholar asked. Virgil's face tightened. "No, what you know will not save you." They moved past rows of firelit graves. Screams rose, not from torment, but from declarations of being right. At the edge of the field, the scholar stumbled. A loose stone shifted beneath his foot. He fell, nearly plunging into an open tomb glowing with fire. He caught himself at the edge. A whisper came from the dark. "Your logic has limits. Your silence will follow." Here with their followers are entombed the arch-heretics of every sect, and far more than you think with the like is buried, and the monuments are heated more and less. They stood at the edge of a vast precipice, the air vibrating with unseen menace. From the abyss rose a shape, at once revolting and beautiful, Geryon. It had the face of a kindly man, calm, composed, almost divine, but its body was monstrous, the hairy flanks of a beast, the paws of a lion, the coils of a serpent, and a tail ending in a barbed stinger. Its wings spread wide, like curtains of shadow. "This is the beast of fraud," said Virgil. "It deceives with beauty and kills with truth." Geryon's coils moved with elegance, and it lowered itself to offer passage. They climbed upon its back, Virgil behind, steady and silent, and the descent began. The air thinned. Below lay Malbolge, 10 concentric trenches carved into black stone, each trench a separate mask of deceit. They landed at the edge of the first Bolgia. Immediately, the stench of falsehood filled the air, thick as perfume over decay. 2 endless lines of souls moved in opposite directions, naked and whipped by horned demons. "These," Virgil said, are the seducers and the panderers. They turned affection into transaction. The scholar watched as one soul, skin flayed from lashes, still smiled as he walked, mouthing seductions that now meant nothing. Another, a noblewoman, kept repeating the same phrase, words once used to betray a lover. Her feet were torn and raw, but she walked on, unable to stop. In the second trench, flatterers wallowed in excrement, literal filth for the lies they spoke. One soul turned his head and grinned. Words can polish anything, he said, even this. The scholar felt his stomach turn. In the third, they saw the simoniacs, clergy who sold the sacred. Their legs burned as they hung upside down in baptismal holes, flames licking their sawls. Each cried out the names of popes, bishops, kings who bartered with grace. The scholar turned away. Why do they still believe they served God? Virgil's face darkened. Because they confused the altar with the treasury. In the fourth trench, false prophets stumbled blindly, heads twisted backward. They walked in reverse, groaning with every step. They wanted to see too far ahead, Virgil said. Now they can only look back. The scholar paused at the fifth trench. A man sat on a stone alone. His skin shimmered like gold, but it cracked with each breath, revealing writhing worms beneath. He was a deceiver of appearances. A whisper rose. This is what beauty becomes when truth is abandoned. The air grew thick with illusion. In the sixth trench, hypocrites wore cloaks lined with lead. They glowed with righteousness on the outside, but inside, they staggered under crushing weight. Each step was a lie lived in silence. The scholar began to feel dizzy, the faces blurred. Virgil's voice grew distant. Do not falter, the guide warned. Deceit hides not only from others, but from the self. In the seventh trench, thieves burst into flame, turned to ash, then reformed, only to be consumed again. One looked into the scholar's eyes and laughed. You call this punishment? It's rebirth. By the eighth, he could barely stand. They passed counterfeiters, their bodies bloated, eyes blind, vomiting coins that melted into ash. Their hunger never stopped. In the ninth trench stood the false counselors, tongues of fire with voices trapped within. Each flame flickered with ambition, every word a ghost of manipulation. The scholar reached out and felt heat, not from flame, but from lies spoken long ago. Then the 10th trench, false witnesses, broken bodies fused with beasts, jaws split open, eyes sewn shut. They crawled in circles, endlessly accusing. The air was a choir of blame without meaning. The scholar turned and saw a mirror. It stood alone at the trench's center. In its reflection, his face appeared, reversed, his eyes empty. He stepped forward, entranced. Not yet, Virgil said, seizing his arm. Not here. The scholar recoiled. The mirror cracked. They moved on, Geryon now gone, and the trenches echoing behind them. Behold the beast that has the pointed tail, who crosses mountains, shatters weapons, walls. Behold the one whose stench infects the world. The wind was gone. They stood now upon the edge of all things. Before them stretched a lake of ice, Cocytus, flat, vast, and silent. No flames, no storm, no cries, only stillness, only cold. The air itself seemed frozen. Even breath crystallized at the lips. The scholar wrapped his arms around himself, but warmth no longer mattered. This was not the absence of heat. This was the absence of God. Encased beneath the transparent surface were faces, eyes wide, mouths frozen in screams or silence. Their bodies were contorted, arms twisted behind backs, jaws split open by the act of betrayal itself. Some wept blood, others only stared. Here, Virgil said, lie the traitors, those who broke bonds meant to be sacred. This is the final circle. The ice beneath their feet creaked with each step, but never cracked. Within its depths, the scholar saw memories, reflections of people he had known, trusted, perhaps disappointed. He saw glimpses of himself, not as he was, but as he had feared becoming. This cold, he said, shivering, it burns. Because it forgets, Virgil replied. Fire may destroy, but cold erases. They walked in silence until the lake dipped and the darkness deepened. A shape rose at the center, colossal, motionless, embedded in the ice from waist downward, Lucifer. He was not horned nor hideous. He was beautiful, still radiant, but cracked by sorrow. 3 faces stretched from one massive head, each weeping endlessly. In each of his 3 mouths, he chewed the damned, Judas Iscariot, Brutus, and Cassius. The symbols of divine betrayal, political treason, and personal sin. The ice did not restrain him, his own wings did. They flapped slowly, eternally, churning wind that froze the lake, his punishment born from his own prideful flight. The scholar approached. The world shrank, all light fell away. Lucifer's central face turned to him. For a long moment, there was only the sound of ice creaking under the weight of eternity. Then the morning star spoke. His voice was not thunder, it was not ash, it was a whisper, too old for language. "What would you do," he asked, "if truth cost you heaven?" The scholar could not answer. Lucifer blinked. A tear, glowing like starlight, slid down his cheek and froze before reaching his chin. Then the silence returned. Virgil took his arm and led him past. No ladder, no stair, only a narrow path behind the devil's back, where the world turned. The scholar looked once more at the fallen light, not monstrous, not triumphant, just broken. And as they climbed toward the surface of the world, the scholar understood. This journey was never punishment, it was revelation. The worst damnation was not in fire, not in pain, it was in seeing yourself and knowing. The guide and I into that hidden road now entered, to return to the bright world. And without care of having any rest, we mounted up, he first and I the second, till I beheld through a round aperture some of the beauteous things that heaven doth bear. Thence we came forth to re-behold the stars.